In Gerald Carter's world, everything had a price tag. Want a building permit fast-tracked? That's $50,000. Need criminal charges to appear against a family refusing to sell their home? Easy. But Carter had never faced a problem money couldn't solve, until now. Because there was a new player in his carefully corrupted game. One his money couldn't touch, his threats couldn't silence, and his army of lawyers couldn't intimidate. An 18-year-old girl who had just filed papers to represent her family in the biggest fraud case the state had ever seen. His associates laughed. A teenager playing lawyer in a second-hand suit with her late grandfather's briefcase? It was absurd. But Carter wasn't laughing. Because when he looked into Olivia Wright's eyes across that courtroom, he saw something chillingly familiar. The same fire that made her grandfather a terror to corrupt officials 30 years ago. The same unflinching resolve that had brought down senators, judges, and business moguls before cancer did what no amount of money or threats could do. And now, William Wright's granddaughter stood in his courtroom, armed with nothing but truth and her grandfather's old law books. And for the first time in his life, Gerald Carter was about to learn what it felt like to face an opponent who couldn't be bought. Because some things don't have a price tag. Justice is one of them. Asterisk, 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 dawn broke over Riverton, painting the modest homes in amber and gold. The Wright family's two-story house stood proudly among its neighbors, its well-tended garden a testament to Evelyn Wright's loving care. Inside, the gentle notes of Amazing Grace floated through the morning air, Evelyn's warm voice filling their home with its familiar comfort. Samuel Wright sat at the kitchen table, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug. His dark eyes were locked on the morning newspaper, the headline screaming in bold letters asterisk asterisk local family faces arson charges in Carter Industries warehouse fire. Millions in damages claimed. Asterisk asterisk he had read it a dozen times already, each word cutting deeper than the last. Evelyn's voice caught slightly as she noticed her husband's expression, but she pressed on with him, refusing to let fear silence her morning ritual. The smell of bacon and eggs filled the kitchen, a futile attempt at normalcy in their increasingly chaotic lives. Upstairs, 18-year-old Olivia Wright sat at her desk, surrounded by towering stacks of legal books. Her grandfather's old leather-bound volumes dominated the collection, their pages worn smooth by years of use. William Wright's presence seemed to linger in every carefully annotated margin, in every underlined passage. She had been up since 4, poring over statutes and precedents, searching for anything that might help her family. The sound of her mother's singing drew her downstairs, her notebook clutched tightly against her chest. She paused in the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene. Her father's tense shoulders, her mother's forced movements, signs of strain that had become all too familiar in recent weeks. "Morning, baby," Evelyn called, managing a smile as she placed a plate of eggs on the table. "You're up early again." Olivia nodded, settling into her chair. "I've been reviewing Grandpa's notes on the Harris case from '87. He defended a family against false accusations from a developer back then, too." She hesitated before adding, "Dad, Mr. Patterson called last night?" Samuel looked up sharply. "After I went to bed?" "Yes, sir." Olivia opened her notebook, her handwriting neat and precise. "He's withdrawing from the case." The kitchen fell silent. Even Evelyn's singing stopped, leaving only the quiet sizzle of bacon on the stove. Samuel's mug hit the table with more force than necessary, coffee sloshing over the rim. "He can't do that. He said he received threats," Olivia said quietly. "He wouldn't give details, but he mentioned it would be better for everyone if he stepped away." Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "I've already called every law firm in the directory. No one will take the case." Samuel stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor. "Henderson and Associates? Won't touch it. Mitchell's Group? Too busy. Supposedly. Bradford and Peters? They won't return my calls." Samuel exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. "They're afraid of Carter. They won't say it directly, But that's the reason. Evelyn moved to stand behind her husband, placing her hands on his shoulders, a gesture that had been his anchor through 25 years of marriage. What are we going to do? Samuel covered her hand with his own. We'll figure something out. We always do. I could do it, Olivia said quietly. Her parents turned to look at her, confusion giving way to understanding as they processed her words. No, Samuel said firmly. Absolutely not. Daddy, listen. You're 18, Olivia. This isn't your school's debate club. Olivia stood, matching her father's intensity. I know that, but I also know the law. Grandpa taught me everything he knew. I've been studying his cases since I was 12. Baby, Evelyn began gently. This is Gerald Carter we're talking about. His legal team isn't just lawyers. They're sharks. They destroy people for fun. And they're trying to destroy us right now. Olivia's voice rose with passion. They're using this fake arson charge to take everything. Our home, Mom's daycare license, Dad's job at the school. All because we wouldn't sell our property for their luxury condos. She moved to the living room, returning with her grandfather's framed law degree. Grandpa fought battles like this his whole life. He was one of the first black lawyers in this city. People threatened him, mocked him, tried to run him out of business. But he never backed down. Samuel softened slightly. Your grandfather was a great man, baby girl. But he was also a trained lawyer with years of experience. And who trained him? Olivia countered. He taught himself from books, just like I'm doing. He took the bar exam after studying on his own because no law school would accept him. He learned by doing, by fighting the battles no one else would take. She pulled out her grandfather's copy of the state legal code, its pages marked with sticky notes and highlighter. There's precedent for this. In extraordinary circumstances, a non-attorney can represent family members in court. I've researched it thoroughly. Evelyn sank into a chair, her breakfast forgotten. Even if it's legally possible, baby, the risk is too high. These people are dangerous. More dangerous than letting them take everything. Olivia spread her research across the table. Look at this. The fire inspector's report is full of inconsistencies. The security footage they're using doesn't show what they claim. And Mrs. Walker next door? She saw something that night. A knock at the door made them all jump. Samuel approached cautiously, checking through the peephole before opening it to reveal Eleanor Walker, their neighbor of 20 years. The elderly woman clutched her purse tightly, her eyes darting nervously. I heard about Mr. Patterson, she said, stepping inside. I've been scared to speak up, but I can't stay quiet anymore. Olivia immediately grabbed her notebook. Mrs. Walker, would you be willing to testify? The woman hesitated, then nodded. It's time someone stood up to them. Olivia's heart pounded. The fight had begun.